UFC Denver just had 3 short notice fights announced for it, and because, of course, we already made the full card breakdown video, today I'm going to be breaking down these 3 new fights. We're going to be breaking down Montel Jackson versus Da'mon Blackshear. We're going to be breaking down Joshua Van versus Charles Johnson and Drew Dober versus Jean Silva with timestamps if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's start off by breaking down the first fight, Montel Jackson versus Da'mon Blackshear. I always do that. I always put it right at the wrong card. Anyways, guys, this is a really good fight because if you guys have been following the channel, you would know that I am very, very high in Da'mon Blackshear, and spoiler alert, at the end of the day, I am going to pick him to win, but it is important to note that this is a short notice fight, just like all 3 fights that have been on here, with the exception of maybe Drew Dober, because Drew Dober was always supposed to be on this card. So we have Montel Jackson returning off from a layoff, and it's been over a year since his fight with Ronnie Yaya. He is he's honestly, for the division, he's a big guy, a lot of power, very dangerous. He has very, very hard, crisp shots, and he's good at what he does, man. He comes in here and tries to knock you out, and he's riding a 4-fight win streak at this moment after his last loss was almost 4 years ago. But at the end of the day, he has not been active. That's the problem with Montel Jackson. I actually don't know why. If anybody could shed some light in that in the comments, I would appreciate it. Why? I don't know if he was injured or if he was just taking time off. Maybe he has a side business. I don't really know. That's besides the point. He's taking on Da'mon Blackshear, who is entering his prime. And guys, I don't know if anybody feels the same way about this, but because I haven't seen a lot of people been talking about it, I think this fight against Mario Bautista was a robbery. I thought that Da'mon Blackshear clearly won the first and second round, but at the end of the day, it was a pretty competitive fight. You have Da'mon Blackshear, who is an extremely complete fighter. He has great striking with an incredible, and I always used to say he's underrated for the ground game, but now people are kind of seeing that about Da'mon Blackshear. He's always calm in the octagon. He shows very, very high fight IQ, and honestly, guys, I have been called crazy for this before, but I think in the future, Da'mon Blackshear has title contender written on him. I don't know if he's going to be champion, but I think that Da'mon Blackshear will absolutely be able to contest with the top of the bantamweights. I'm very, very high on this guy. And in my opinion, he's riding a 3-fight win streak over here. He's also, it's important to note that he has been put through the ringer of opponents. Like, he lost to Farid Basharat, then went on to beat Luan Lacerda, Jose Johnson, and in my opinion, he beat Mario Bautista. And Mario Bautista, we're just finally finding out how good Mario Bautista actually is. So I'm still really, really high in Da'mon Blackshear. And I think that when this fight comes, and I'm strongly considering betting on this fight. I haven't taken a look at the odds yet. I usually do it. I don't know about you guys. I know that I like to bet one card at a time. Right now, I'm focusing on this weekend's bets. Anyways, Montel Jackson, if he's going to beat Da'mon Blackshear, I think it's going to be just by KO. And I think that Da'mon Blackshear has the chin, has the defense, has the fight IQ, has the way to drag it to the ground if he wants to. And I think that Da'mon Blackshear is going to get the win here. But it is important to note, and it's the same thing that is very important to note when talking about all of these new fights. It's short notice. That's the issue. And something that I forgot too is this Mario Bautista fight was short notice. He fought 7 days ago. I should have mentioned that. He fought 7 days ago before this fight, came in and fought again 7 days later against Mario Bautista, a guy like that. I think Da'mon Blackshear with a training camp would easily beat Mario Bautista. I just think he's a great fighter, man. And I'm ready for the glazing comments. I'm ready for the glazing comments down below, but I don't think I'm wrong. The problem is, the reason why I'm only considering placing a bet is because of how high I am on Da'mon Blackshear. I don't think that you should be betting on any of these fights because they're short notice. We don't know how in shape they are. We don't know if somebody was getting ready for a training camp at least. That's the big issue. So if you guys haven't figured it out, I also hope that Da'mon Blackshear gets a win. I think that he is a very, very underappreciated fighter. So let's continue on over to the betting odds. And you have Da'mon Blackshear yet again being underrated at underdog money. This is why, man, I am strongly considering betting on Da'mon Blackshear just because it's at underdog odds right now. And you can see you have round lines too, which is very interesting. I don't mind the over 2.5. I'm an over 1.5 round guy. I don't know about you guys, but if you follow the channel, you know that I really like the 1.5 round lines. But I do like Da'mon Blackshear in this matchup. But again, staying away from it is the right thing to do because of how short notice this fight is. Now, guys, let's continue on over to the next fight, that being Joshua Van versus Charles Johnson, another contender that I am very, very high on in Joshua Van, although I do still have questions about Joshua Van. So Joshua Van is an incredible boxer with an insane chin, great pressure, and he does have sneaky takedowns and kicks behind it. He will walk forward, he will pick you apart, and he will make you think about where you're getting hit. By that I mean he'll hit you to the liver and hit you to the head. He is very, very good at making you think about where Joshua Van is hitting you. But He's taking on Charles Johnson, and Charles Johnson is a very, very underrated fighter. He is a stand-up fighter, a striker with excellent speed, excellent technique. The only place where Charles Johnson does suffer is against heavy pressure wrestlers, and Charles Johnson has been put through the ringer. The only other thing I like to know about Charles Johnson is, and this is something that I do think is important to note when breaking down fights, is Charles Johnson does listen to his corner. And you see a lot of fighters actually, to be honest with you, ignore their corners. So I think that when somebody always listens to their corner, I think it's something to note. And you saw that in his last win against Jake Hadley. His corner was like, hey, you need to turn it up. You need to turn it up. You're not being active enough. And he did just that. But that's not the only example, of course. It's just of recency. And this is something that I want to point out with Charles Johnson moving forward, is he does listen to his corner. He does take that advice. He's able to adjust during the fight. So, of course, guys, short notice fight. And this matters a lot because you have two heavy pressure strikers who use a lot of cardio and a lot of heart in a match. If one of these guys doesn't show up the way that they usually show up, then the other guy's going to absolutely pick them apart. Now, let's assume that both of them do show up their best selves. Like I was going to say, with Charles Johnson, he's been put through the ringer of opponents, okay? He lost to Ode Osborne, Cody Durden, and Rafael Estevam, and he's also lost split decisions. Charles Johnson is infinitely better than his 15-6 record, and he has taken on better competition than Joshua Van. But Joshua Van, since coming to the UFC, he's looked so good. A split decision against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Kevin Borjas, and Felipe Bunes. These are all really, really good talent as well. I just think that Charles Johnson has faced the better competition. I don't want to say he's looked better, but he has faced better competition. He has more UFC experience. He has more high-level experience. But in saying that, though, I do think that Joshua Van is the real deal. He really is. He's 22 years old. He's only going to get better. And it's not often that you see a 22-year-old come onto the scene like Joshua Van did. Like, this dude can absolutely be a problem for the division. Not like Raul Rosas Jr., where he seems like he has the potential. He's continuously getting better, right? Joshua Van is already contender-worthy, in my opinion. And he showed that coming to the UFC. Like I said, these are three really, really nice wins. So when these guys come and fight, I think that it's going to be a mainly boxing approach. And the problem is, if both of these guys were at their best, if I knew that both guys were training, both guys were healthy, both guys were absolutely ready to go, I still think this would be a pick'em fight. I know that Joshua Van, everybody's high on. I'm high on Joshua Van too, but people can't forget, Charles Johnson is a speedy, accurate striker. Joshua Van has shown that he can overwhelm people, but Charles Johnson can hang with that. He can absolutely hang with that. The only thing worth pointing out is that Charles Johnson is 33 years old. For the flyweight division, that's something to take note of because his age is going to start showing soon, but it has not shown yet. The other thing to note is that Charles Johnson will have a decent size reach advantage over here, and he uses it well. I think that the potential for Charles Johnson to keep Joshua Van on the outside is absolutely there. Regardless, guys, my point being, this is a short notice fight. We don't know who's been in shape. I am inclined to believe that Charles Johnson is in shape for sure because he's always talking about getting a fight. He's willing to step on short notice. He's wanted to book an opponent for a very long time, and we know he kind of just lives that training martial arts type style. Joshua Van could very well be doing the same thing. I'm just saying that I don't know. I can't trust it. We also got to take into consideration when cutting weight. But this is the best opponent that Joshua Van has faced yet. And if Joshua Van outstrikes Charles Johnson, we need to look at this guy as a serious contender. The only other issue that we have with Joshua Van is his ground game hasn't been seriously tested yet. But Charles Johnson's not going to be the guy to do that. That would really surprise me, to be honest with you. But, hey, you never know. Charles Johnson is a very, very sneaky fighter. At this point, I think he's a veteran. He's taken on the best of the best, man. He is such an underappreciated fighter. But anyways, this should be a pick'em fight. I'm going to ever so slightly lean to Joshua Van because in his recent performances, he has impressed me more than Charles Johnson. But then again, Charles Johnson's great. He's also been impressive as lately. Joshua Van's just been that little bit more impressive. Plus, I can trust him at 22, almost 23 years old to continuously get better. Let's take a look at what the betting odds have to say. And man, for who I would like to see to win this fight, guys, it's tough, man, because I like both guys. This is going to be one where it's two really, really nice fighters. I'm going to cheer for Charles Johnson, actually, because Joshua Van has his whole career ahead of him. Anyways, let's take a look at the betting odds. You have Joshua Van sitting at almost a 2-1 favorite in most sports books, but that makes sense. That doesn't shock me, but I do think this fight should ultimately be a pick'em. Regardless, I'm very, very excited to watch this fight, guys. It's going to be a banger. Now, guys, let's move on to the, I almost said main event, but it's not the main event. The last short notice fight we have over here, that being, again, Drew Dober versus Jean Silva. Jean Silva, like we were just talking about Da'mon Blackshear, he fought short notice. He just fought on the last UFC 303 card, and now he's back. And it's not like he had a flawless performance. He had a really good performance, but his body was put through some work. It's important to note. So, Drew Dober. We all know Drew Dober at this point. He's a very exciting fighter. He's a Muay Thai striker who uses calculated chaos to get his wins. He has a crazy chin. He drags people into a war and completely overwhelms them. He does have an okay ground game, but he certainly has underrated striking. A lot of people look at Drew Dober and talk about like the wars that he brings people into, and they kind of describe him as if you were describing Yuri Prochazka, where he just makes it chaos. The reason why I say calculated chaos is Drew Dober will drag you into that war, but he will use Muay Thai skills to get the upper hand. Now, it is important to note, everything that I just said was Drew Dober of the past. Recently, Drew Dober has been shown to be accurate. He's been shown to be patient and powerful at the same time. He spoke about recently, and because it was after this Matt Frivola loss that he was getting into his own hype. So instead of just swinging, he focused more on technique, and we've seen that in his past two fights. Now, it went really well for him in the Ricky Glenn fight. He had an amazing performance here, and he showed. He took that kind of same approach to Nato Moicano, made a little bit of lapse of judgment in that fight, and I do think that he had the ability to win this fight, but at the end of the day, he didn't. So the question is Drew Dober going to show up and kind of make the fight more chaotic, or is he going to continue to be accurate? He's going to use the high fight IQ that he's shown to have in these past few fights. So we don't know exactly where Drew Dober fits when he is the Drew Dober that wants to fight technical. That's the big issue over here. He's taking on Jean Silva, who we just broke down. He is an extremely, the way I describe him is he is a violent fighter. He will do anything to hurt you, whether that's elbowing you in the ribs. If you're on the ground, he's going to elbow your thighs. He doesn't want to touch you. He wants to hurt you. He will try to come in and absolutely bully you. And that's not to say that he lacks technique or anything. Don't get me wrong. He's a good striker. He has good power. He has good takedown defense, although the takedown defense isn't perfect. He has good takedown defense. The other thing to note is that, and I think this is important to note, to be honest with you, is Jean Silva looks like he's one of those crazy people who legitimately enjoys being in there. And I really, really noticed that in his Charles Jourdain fight. He's shown that, don't get me wrong, in his other fights, but it really made me think about it and go, okay, for a guy that's that strange, that legitimately enjoys the violence, enjoys being in there, that's a guy you really need to look out for. He comes in, he wants to bully you. He wants to be mean. He wants to hurt you, and he will laugh at you doing so. He enjoys being in there. So that works with him. All the confidence that he has, it's great. One day, it's going to work against him. And Drew Dober is the guy that can absolutely happen to. You see him constantly with his hands down, smiling, laughing. He could move his head a little bit more. It's not non-existent, but he is going to get cracked one day, and Drew Dober is absolutely the guy that can crack him. Jean Silva is coming off of amazing wins since he came into the UFC, and even before that, to be honest with you. He destroyed Weston Wilson. 4 days ago at the time of recording this video, man, Charles Jourdain just KO'd with an uppercut, and it was a good fight, man. It was a good fight while it lasted. I still think that Jean Silva needs to be tested, and I think that Drew Dober is absolutely that test. We still don't know. Like, Jean Silva so far has shown to have a really good chin. He has, but Drew Dober has that next level power. The other thing that we need to take into consideration is that Jean Silva is going to be cutting weight again. Is that going to affect his chin? He just cut weight for the Charles Jourdain fight. He just put his body through a firefight that he was like, don't get me wrong, he had a good performance, right? He had a great performance. But at the end of the day, he put his body through a UFC fight. He put his body through more than a round. He put his body through a weight cut. Drew Dober has not done that. Drew Dober has been training because Drew Dober was supposed to be on this card. To what extent Drew Dober was training, I don't know, because he didn't have an opponent. He didn't have a training camp specifically for Jean Silva, so he couldn't adapt to the style. So at the end of the day, this still is short notice. It still is, but I think all the cards right now are pointing to Drew Dober. Jean Silva hasn't been tested against a guy like Drew Dober. He hasn't faced a power puncher like Drew Dober. He hasn't faced somebody who is going to be willing enough to get into that chaos with Jean Silva and throw. Drew Dober probably enjoys it almost as much as Jean Silva. And Drew Dober has the accuracy throughout the chaos, the experience, and the will to win. I think that Drew Dober can match Jean Silva in this department. And if Jean Silva outworks Drew Dober the same way that he did Charles Jourdain, this is going to be somebody that we really seriously need to pay attention to. But I can't put my money on that yet because Jean Silva, like I said, hasn't been tested. Drew Dober will be by far his biggest test. He has a great chin, heart. He has the Muay Thai to get the win. This fight's going to be primarily on the feet, and Drew Dober has been ready for a fight. Again, at the end of the day, it's short notice. At the end of the day, they're not ready for each other. We don't know to what extent we've been training. And on top of that, Jean Silva, we have a lot of questions about what his body's been put through. Stay away from this fight when it comes to your money. Although I will say I am extremely tempted on Drew Dober, but it is a bad bet. And guys, for who I would like to see win, don't be wrong, Jean Silva is an absolute blast to watch. But I've been a big fan of Drew Dober for a very long time, man. And Drew Dober, like I said about Da'mon Blackshear, is a very, very underappreciated fighter. Same with Charles Jourdain, man. I can't help but cheer for him. So there we go. The odds reflect what I've been saying. It is a pick'em fight, and this absolutely should be a pick'em fight. If you are betting on this fight, you are completely 100% gambling with your money. You're throwing it on red. You're choosing heads or tails. There is a lot to take into consideration with this fight. If you want to risk it, risk it. But guys, let me know what you thought about all of these brand new fights down below. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you're interested in watching the entire full card breakdown, I have it here for you. Although it certainly doesn't live up to these 3 fights. This made the card much better. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care.